Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Janzen and I'm the flute professor at Texas A&M University, Kingsville. It's the last week of March and our university has now moved all of its instruction onto an online format. And it's been quite the experience and exploration for our faculty and for our students. Many of the goals that bring structure to our curriculum and our calendar, such as concerts, master classes, rehearsals, have now been canceled. And we're being forced to get a little bit creative when it comes to effective practice strategies and using our time towards independent education. I've been fielding a lot of questions from my students and also from regional high school students about how to use this time effectively and how to make the most out of your flute practicing when those normal goals in the academic calendar are missing. So I thought it would be of help to develop a small series of instructional videos like this one that can look at some creative ways for practicing the flute at this time. And today we are going to start with time management because that's where great practicing always begins. So we're going to look at time management on two different levels. We're going to look at it from the macro level and the micro level. Macro level refers to planning weeks and months in advance. And that's particularly challenging right now because most of us now have very little on our calendars for the coming weeks. So we have to think a little further ahead than we normally do. And we also have to think about smaller projects that maybe we can do on our own. And the micro level is dealing with organizing your practice time within the day or within an individual practice session. So my first strategy for effective time management and practicing is know yourself. This is actually a really great opportunity when you're now stuck at home and you have the flexibility of doing most of your learning online. You can decide when in the day you learn the best. Some of us are early birds, some of us are night owls, some of us are something in between. And if you really take a look at yourself and question, when are you most engaged? When are you most energetic? When are you most positive? That's the time of day that you probably want to schedule most of your work. You also want to think about how much. It's really easy when you seemingly have the entire day in front of you to aspire to lofty goals like I'm going to practice 5 hours a day. But for most of us, that's not a practical reality, or at least not one that we can maintain every day. So I think it's better to start with smaller goals, even half an hour or an hour of practicing each day. And you can adjust that as you go if you find that you're managing that quite well and you want to challenge yourself to add more. And then you also want to think about how often you're going to be practicing. This doesn't really mean so much every day. We all want to try and practice at least a little every day. But within that day, you can either decide to put the bulk of your practicing at one period, or you can decide to break it up into smaller sections. And a lot of that has to do with knowing how you learn best. Are you most focused when you're working on a project and you just keep going? Or do you deal better with more variety, more change within your day's structure? And we'll talk about that a little bit later at the micro level as well. The next challenge is knowing your place. And this is particularly difficult when a lot of us are trapped at home, when we've been asked as communities to shelter in place. It means that our homes are often filled with younger siblings, parents who have been told to work from home, even grandparents and other extended family members. And it makes it really difficult to find a place in your home that's isolated and private where you can really do some great work. So I encourage you to get a little creative, whether it's finding a bathroom or a closet or even inside a car. I've practiced inside of cars in the past. It's not going to be ideal, but it is a place that you can make your own. And if you're organized about it, it can be um, a great place to get some effective work done. And also when. When are you going to be able to practice and make sound that's appropriate for everyone? So if you are practicing within the house, you have to consider other family members who might be sleeping or working, and you're going to have to manage your learning style with that time schedule. And then finally, you want to know your goals. And this is where we have to start thinking a little bit more creatively, because we don't have the goals that are typical for this time of year, like spring recitals or juries. So repertoire-wise, maybe you want to think a little further ahead in the calendar. Maybe you have a music camp or a music festival that is coming up in a few months, or you know you'll probably have seating auditions for band or orchestra in August or September as the next term starts rolling. Or maybe you're thinking even further ahead to the next all-state competition or to an audition for university. And maybe there are some areas, some fundamentals of your playing that you realize could use some polishing. And this is a great time when you could start thinking about how to adjust those or perfect those in small amounts each day. And the when of those goals is also important. It's really easy to think about long-term goals one day and then forget about them the next, or dismiss them because they're so far away. So I think it's important to write them down, have them in your phone or your agenda or calendar, or write them down on your music if you're preparing repertoire for a specific event, so that you have that daily reminder of what your goals are moving towards. So at the micro level, the strategies are the same, they just get adjusted a little bit. So when you're looking at your practice session for that day, here's another place where you need to know yourself. Do you work well with lists? Do you want to think ahead to what you want to accomplish in each individual practice session? And do you want to keep a list of those things or of your goals for the next day as you're going? I also really recommend intermittent practicing, which is when you schedule yourself a very, very small amount of time, like 5 minutes to work on one thing. And when that 5 minutes is up, you move on to a new concept. Maybe you start your work with tone for 5 minutes, and then you do some repertoire for 5 minutes, and then you move back to tone for 5 minutes. So it's small amounts of work, but you're coming back repeatedly to that work. And that's really great for people who enjoy a lot of variety or feel like it's a struggle for them to focus for long periods of time, but might be very frustrating for someone who prefers to work in larger blocks of time. So again, you have to kind of know what kind of learning style works best for you. And if you're the type of person who loves surprises, you can try a lottery system. Put everything you need to work on in that session on a piece of paper, put them in a jar or an envelope or a sock or a hat, and just pull them out randomly. And that gives you the advantage of working in a different order every day. And I find when I use that practice strategy that I make a lot of new connections between the parts of my practicing. I might notice, oh, this particular exercise in Taffanel and Gobert that I worked on today is almost exactly the same as this technical passage in my repertoire piece. And you start to make some really great connections and develop some great practice strategies out of that as well. Know your place is also important at the micro level. You want to make sure that the area that you have designated as your practice station is prepared. It's a lot like baking. You want to have all your ingredients, your metronome, your tuner, your pencil, your music, your flute, they're ready, so you're not running around distracted to try and get them during your practice time. Ideally, you're looking for a place that gives you isolation, that gives you privacy so you can practice in a focused manner. But the reality of that in the corona pandemic is that that may not be possible because your home may be full. So look for ways that you can engage. If you're babysitting a family member, use the intermittent practice strategy and tell your little sister, you know what, you work on your math homework for 5 minutes and I'll practice my scales for 5 minutes. And you set a timer and you make it some joint work. Or you do some practice performances for a grandparent or for a parent. So there are lots of ways that you can practice, but still cope with less than ideal circumstances. And here too, you want to know your goals, of course, within the individual practice session. Remember that you're not looking for perfection, you're looking for improvement. And if that means that you need to journal or record yourself to kind of keep track and notice the improvements that you're making, by all means use those. They're at your disposal. And you can also share your improvements online with your friends, either through social media or privately. You can have a phone conference or use Zoom to share what you're working on. So here's an example of a sample schedule for me. This is an ideal day, but it doesn't apply to every day. I'm the type of person that enjoys working in the morning and prefers to break their practicing up, though, usually in 1 hour chunks. So I have some personal time in the morning, but I'm working by 9. And you can see I've listed some tone, some technique, and some repertoire for that first practice session. And then I do some teaching, and then I have another practice session, again, tone, technique, and some repertoire. A break for some office work, and then a return to some more practicing and some teaching at the end of the day. This doesn't happen every day. So yesterday I had an extra lesson and I got distracted by some additional office work, so I didn't get this much practicing in. But I did get some in, and that's what's important, that it happens every day. And you do have to be at peace with that because you know, there are a few key points to remember when you're dealing with learning at home and under unusual circumstances like these. And if you're going to be successful, I think it's important to remember those. You need to be flexible and accept that not everything is going to go according to plan, but you have to make sure your plan is structured so that you can at least feel some success at the end of each day or at the end of the week as you look back. Be realistic about your goals, and that will be a lot easier. Be creative about how you're approaching your practicing. Try to find different ways to practice and experiment with some of these suggestions until you find a routine that works for you. Or maybe a routine doesn't work for you at all, and you want to use a different combination of these strategies each day. Make sure your practicing stays fun. Give yourself some little challenges at the end of the day. Share your work with a friend. Music is about communication. So that's one of our real struggles in this era of social distancing, is that we're away from that normal communication that we have each day. So we have to get a little bit more creative and start relying more on social media and different programs like Zoom and FaceTime and things like that to allow us to have that kind of fun at the end of the day. And if you keep all of these in mind, you will be productive. And that's our goal. We don't need perfection. We just need you to be productive. And everybody wants that. Everybody feels good at the end of their time if they can look back and say, I accomplished something. So that's the end of our first session. And if you have any questions, you can reach me through any of these different platforms. I'll post a new session next week. It'll be more flute oriented, but I hope you enjoyed this one and find it useful. And I look forward to speaking with you next week. Thanks so much.